founded by Naimisha, and she wanted to create this community so that you could encourage and advocate for inclusion and diversity in all product management disciplines, from UX design to development and everything in between. So the goal of New York Women in Product Management is to bring together leaders in this field to share their stories, best practices, and provide mentorship and support, so that women can successfully build impact and profitable products. So welcome again. And I am going to now hand it over to Nikki, who, as I mentioned before, is a technical product marketing manager at Spotify. In my experience getting to know Nikki, I found her to be extremely warm and welcoming and refreshingly easy to chat with, which I think you will experience when she gives her presentation today. And after her presentation, there's going to be a Q&A. So at any time throughout this presentation, if you have any questions you want to ask Nikki, please put them in the chat, and we'll be collecting those and asking them a little bit later. So without further ado, I'm just going to pass it over to Nikki.
Hey everyone, so nice to meet everyone. My name is Nikki Bassetti, and I'm a technical product marketing manager at Spotify. This is my contact information in case you want it, and I'm just going to get started. So who am I? In this presentation, I'm going to go over my educational background, the previous roles and companies I've been a part of, my path to product management, what I do, the experiences that got me here, why it's important to have a growth mindset, and the fact that your net worth is your network, and how to help you in your path to PM or PMM, what kind of resources and tools that would entail. And lastly, I'm here to help you succeed, so let's connect. So before we begin, I just want everyone to know that you just feel free to drop in your questions in the comments. We're actually going to be answering them towards the end of the session because we have a Q&A plan, as Miykaelah mentioned earlier. So I'm going to talk about my past first and what it's looked like. So as far as my educational background, I actually accidentally got into technology. So when I first started my college career at Purdue, I was actually a biological sciences major. I wanted to study this because I really liked chemistry and biology in high school, and my eventual plan was to actually become a doctor. As I progressed in my coursework in college, I realized I did not like chemistry or biology at all. And this meant that I had to figure out what my true passions were. And I realized that I really liked mathematics and working analytically with analytical people. So my best friend actually invited me to attend a hackathon with her. And I had no idea what a hackathon was. I actually thought it was like hacking into like software. Like I thought it was like some illegal activity, but it turned out to not be that. I actually had so much fun at that hackathon, and I came in with 0 skills, and I walked out with HTML and Ruby on Rails skills. After that, I realized I really enjoyed coding and hardware, and I pivoted my career and changed my major to the School of Electrical and Computer Engineering. So then I graduated from Purdue. I got my Bachelor's of Science in Electrical Engineering. And when I say electrical engineering, you're probably wondering, okay, electrical engineering and technical product marketing manager have no overlap in words. How did you get there? And do you use your degree at all? In theory, I actually do not use my degree. I worked on a lot of software, hardware, circuits, and mathematics in my college degree. And right now, I actually don't use any of that, but I do still use the problem-solving skills that I acquired from my degree. Now, the next question you're probably thinking is, does this mean you need to be an engineer to be a product marketer? Not at all. So from what I've seen with product marketing managers is they tend to come from a wide range of disciplines, anywhere from like sociology, communications, business administration, and I've seen also engineers and people who graduated from mathematics also entering product marketing. So regardless of what you studied, where you've been, you can become a product marketing manager. So I'll just kind of do like a quick run through in terms of what my experiences have been. So I started my career as a software engineer, and then I went to become a technology analyst, then a solutions architect, and now a technical product marketing manager. So it took me a long time to really figure out what I wanted to do with my career. And I realized that that's totally okay to not have it figured out. I think a lot of times in society, we always talk about people who have hit success really early in their career, and how they've just kind of made it. I think that it's more important to worry and focus on the journey than it is on the destination, because you really start to learn about yourself that way. And in the process of me finding my passions, I realized I really enjoyed working with people and being a product advocate. And when I say product advocate, I mean being the person who endorses the product, who works with different stakeholders, who tries to understand what the customer's needs are. These are all things I really enjoyed doing, and that's why I pivoted over to become a technical product marketing manager. So you're probably wondering where I've worked. So I've worked everywhere. I've worked in technology, financial services, and now in the music industry. So I started my career at Hewlett Packard as a software engineer. And then I pivoted over to JP Morgan as a technology analyst. I realized I really didn't want to work in the financial services. I thought it was very conservative. So then I moved over to Amazon. And as Amazon, I was actually a solutions architect working at AWS. And it was super fun, but I was constantly meeting with clients, super exhausted all the time. And I wanted a change in my life. And then I ended up in the music industry, and I'm loving it so far. So I'm going to talk about my path to product marketing. Before I talk about my path, I'm just going to preface this by talking about the differences between being a product manager and a product marketing manager. So PMs actually put the product on the shelf. So they work on the earlier phases of the product life cycle. So this means that they are doing the development, the testing, and the part where they work closely with the engineers to actually get all the technical details of the product together. And then product marketing managers actually take the product off the shelf. So once the PMs put it on the shelf, PMM helps with marketing, branding, increasing adoption rates, changing the value proposition based off of customer needs. Those are all things that a product marketing manager takes care of. Even though there are some fine differences within the two disciplines, there are similarities. For example, both disciplines actually talk to the customer. They work with a variety of different stakeholders, and they have to work together to ship out a product. So there's a lot of collaboration within the two disciplines. And typically, a product marketing manager is going to work very closely with a PM. So what do I do now as a product marketer? So I do a lot of different things in my role, to be completely honest. One of the things that I do is I actually help create launch and go-to market plans for products. So launch and go-to market plans are essentially what needs to happen before I launch this product. Like, who are the stakeholders involved? What kind of resources do I need? What different marketing channels am I going to use? And when I say marketing channels, I mean, am I going to endorse this brand on LinkedIn, on a blog post, on a podcast, via email, a newsletter? There's a lot of different channels, and I actually help figure that out with the product manager. My role is I have to wear a lot of different hats. So I have to work very closely with product, engineering, design, even security in terms of shipping out products. So oftentimes I have to work very closely with all these different teams, which is, if you know, these different teams are very different in terms of like personalities and dynamics, because an engineer is going to think differently from a designer, right? So I have to really understand all these personalities and collaborate with them really well to ship out a product. I also work on creating a lot of marketing assets, and this is writing blog posts and also writing communication plans to distribute these assets to the rest of the company. And this is very important because as a PMM, your main role is honestly to create these assets and work collaboratively with your stakeholders. So it's very important that you have this good relationship with everyone you're working with. And lastly, the really fun part about my job is I actually help with partnerships with Google Cloud on campaigns. So you guys might not know, but Spotify is actually the poster child for Google Cloud. So this means that we are running all our compute capacity on Google Cloud. So we have a very strong relationship with them. And oftentimes I'm working on collaboration efforts, like creating a blog post with them, creating a podcast. We also launched a campaign that I'm going to show you guys later. And it's very cool to not only work cross-functionally within people in my own company, but also within another company. So it's very interesting to see that dynamic play out. And this is an example of the campaign that I launched. So it says Spotify is solving for beats that drop, but streams that don't. And this was a super cool campaign that I got to be a part of. And we not only launched it in the New York subway, but also on New York Times, Financial Times, Washington Post. This also got featured in the airport as well, and as well as bus stands in London. So it actually got to go everywhere. And it's super cool that I got to work on this. And this is actually one of the few things you can do as a product marketing manager. Growth mindset. So one of my favorite quotes is, "Nothing is impossible. The word itself says I'm possible." So throughout my journey, in terms of being a product marketing manager, I am very fortunate that my manager gave me an opportunity to take part in this awesome field. I actually had no marketing experience when I came into this role. I only had my technical experience being a software engineer as well as a solutions architect. So that actually was what helped me get into product marketing management, because my team in particular was looking for someone who was technical. And throughout my time being a PMM, there are a lot of things that I don't have the answer to, but something that I'm always aware of and something I always tell myself is, even though I don't have the answers, I can lean on my peers or my coworkers to help me figure this out, or I can look for resources online. The next thing I want to emphasize is your net worth is your network. So something that has helped me become proficient in my current role and in my previous roles is having a group of peers that I can go to if I have a question. So it's really important to have and find a safe group of people that you can go to in your company or even in your life to ask these questions about your career. Like, am I going in the right direction? Is there a resource or book you would recommend for me to really hone in on these skills? Because you should always think of your skill as a muscle. So the more you flex it, the more you strengthen it, the stronger it's going to become. So I would recommend connecting with a tenured peer in your company. So this could be a variety of different people. This could be your skip level director, a really strong woman you look up to in your organization, or even a senior product manager or a senior product marketing manager. These are going to be people you can honestly just reach out, ask them if they would do like a coffee chat with you. We do fikas at Spotify, which is like, so background, we are actually a Swedish company. We're headquartered in Stockholm. So we follow a lot of Swedish traditions, and fika is an intimate way where you can drink coffee and chat with people. And it's a way essentially to forge a relationship with the people you're working with, because a lot of times, like, I won't have the answer to something, and I honestly have to lean on other people to help me or just to collaborate with. And I'd also recommend attending events like this. So I'm fairly new to New York Women in Product Management, and it's honestly been such a cool opportunity being able to do this. And something I actually made out of this was I actually made a friendship out of this. So Miykaelah, who did the intro earlier, we actually met because of New York Women in Product Management. And it's super cool that we were able to forge this friendship and relationship just from this event like this. So I would continue to go to things like this, especially now because everything is a lot more virtual. instead of having a physical presence. So this is what your now could look like. So this is just to give some information regarding what your path to product could look like. So resources and tools. So I would definitely check out books regarding product management or product marketing management. I am specifically reading Lean Analytics right now. So I really like that book in particular because it talks about how you can use insights to really make decisions in your product or even in your organization. And that's really important for me as a product marketing manager because I always want to find ways to improve my product. And the only way I can do that is through data. So through data, I can pinpoint what my customers are actually enjoying, what they're not, and then iterate my product based off of that feedback. So I personally like books because I learn a lot of knowledge from them and I get better at being a PMM from it. I would also recommend doing mock product sessions. So I've seen this done on a couple Facebook groups, like the Women in Product Management Facebook groups, where a lot of women will just reach out and do like mock sessions where you essentially have like a case scenario of a product and then you talk it through with someone in terms of the development process. And it really helps in terms of just providing some clarity to your thought process and understanding how you break down a complicated problem into pieces. I would also suggest connecting with women on Instagram and Facebook about being a woman in tech. So as I mentioned earlier, I actually met Miykaelah on Instagram through NYWPM. And it's been awesome just to be able to connect with people on social media because I no longer can see people in a physical location. So this is just one channel for you to leverage. And I'm also here to help you succeed. So remember, dreams don't work unless you do. So one thing that's really helped me in my career is just actually being able to be vulnerable, being able to tell myself, even if I don't know something, I can figure it out along the way. And for me, that's been very important in general because it's allowed me to open up and just be vulnerable and have the courage to improve myself, even when I don't have all the answers. And I'm more than happy to work with anyone who reaches out to me after this on how to make that possible. And here's my contact information, just in case if you need it. My Instagram is Nikki the New Yorker. My website is nikkinyc.tech. And my email is nikki.bassetti@gmail.com. And now we can get started on the Q&A.
Awesome. Thank you, Nikki, for that great presentation. And thank you everyone who's been sending your questions along the way. We have a lot of great questions that are pouring in. So let's just start with Nikki. Could you tell a little bit more about how much is your product marketing manager role technical? How much is it a technical role versus like more in marketing? How do you relate to marketing? Could you speak more about that?
Yeah, that is a great question. So the reason why my job is called Technical Product Marketing Manager is because I am actually within the platform mission within Spotify. So just to give you some structure on how our organization is, the hierarchy looks like, we have missions. So missions means this is like your purpose in the company. So my mission is called platform. So we are the most engineering part of our company. So we're essentially the people who make the data pipelines, the machine learning models, the algorithms, all that stuff comes from us. And then we have other missions like free. So if you use Spotify, that's the free tier. And we also have premium, which is the premium tier. My role is technical in particular because I cater to all engineers. Other product marketing managers might cater to, I don't know, operations or supply chain. It just depends. Mine is more talking to developers. That's why it's called Technical Product Marketing Manager.
Great. Could you go before we move ahead, could you just go back to the last slide so people can write down your contact info?
Oh, yes. Let me just, okay, cool.
Great. We can leave it there
Yeah.
so no one misses it. So as you transition from more of an engineering background into uh, product marketing management, what skills did you bring with you? What skills did you have to develop? What was the learning curve like for you?
Yeah, so I came in with programming skills, and when I was a solutions architect as well, I came from a sales background. So I was selling cloud products to engineers, PMs, like even sometimes CTOs. So I had to understand user profiles. Like that's the most important thing when you're doing marketing. Like you have to be able to say, okay, so I'm talking to a business analyst right now. Does this person care about like the algorithm of this machine learning model? No, they care more about the value proposition and how this is better than this company. So so when you're talking to your audiences, I would keep into consideration like who they are, do some segmentation, and then try to understand how you would talk to them.
All right, cool. And what is your kind of day to day? Like, what does a day look like for you from 9 to 5 when you get up and go to
Yeah,
work?
that's a cool question. So my 9 to 5 has changed a lot since quarantine. I'm gonna be honest. So in New York, when I was living in New York, it was very like go go go. I was like rushing to get to the subway, and in the morning I would have meetings back to back because majority of my coworkers are actually in Stockholm. So I would be booked in the morning because that was the only time overlap we had. So my mornings were just meetings, and then I would go to lunch, and then sometimes after lunch I would also have meetings. But in the case that I didn't, that's actually when I would start doing work. I'd start doing like presentations. I would start kind of doing some user research, talking to different PMs and engineers about what they're specifically looking for in terms of requirements, and so forth. And the other cool thing about like Spotify is it's not like a traditional company where it's just, you just go there to work. We would have like a lot of like socials after work. We're a music company, so we would have like parties, a DJ. We would go to the rooftop. Like it was a lot of fun. But now that I'm at home and quarantining, my day to day is the exact same as it was when I was in New York, but without the fun extracurriculars from the office.
Great. And I kind of going off of that, I saw someone was curious about what sets Spotify apart from other companies that you've worked for. Like what personal qualities or attributes does Spotify, and also what do they look for in candidates in your experience as well?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I guess the difference is contingent based off of like the industry it's in. So I'm in the music industry. So this means that everything's all about, being creative and being different and standing out. Whereas I feel like when I was working in, for example, JP Morgan, which is the banking industry, it's very conservative, very formal. They're kind of looking for everyone to kind of be a clone of each other. That's how I felt, at least. I really like Spotify in the sense that I feel like I can truly be myself. I can dress any way I want to. I feel like I'm open to express my opinions. We really care about diversity and inclusion at Spotify as well. And we don't just like talk the talk, we actually walk the walk here, which is very different from other companies because I feel like at other places I've worked, diversity was just something they had a poster on and they never really did anything about it. So it's just refreshing to be at a company that actually cares about those values.
Right.
Um, and then you asked about what we look for in candidates. So
Mm-hmm.
in candidates, we really look for someone who has a growth mindset. So oftentimes we don't necessarily hire to make sure that you have like we don't have a checklist that says, okay, this person has to know this, this, and that. We understand that you're not going to know everything, but what's so important is the fact that once you're at Spotify, you're willing to learn, and you're willing to grow. And we really hone in on that growth mindset.
Mm-hmm. And related to that, one that just came in quickly was, is Spotify still hiring right now? Which is a question many people are wondering about many companies.
Yeah, yeah. So luckily, we are still hiring. We're fortunate that we work in the streaming space, so we have not been affected by COVID as much as other companies. For example, companies in like healthcare and like logistics. We're lucky enough where we honestly just have a purely digital presence. So we are still hiring, and we're hiring for like everything pretty much, like engineering, designing, product marketing, product managers, operations managers. We're hiring for everything basically. So definitely check out something on our jobs page. And if you find something interested, I'm more than happy to refer you.
Right. And so, for example, somebody's curious about, you say growth mindset. How would that be evaluated by Spotify? Like, how can you showcase that when you're applying, for example?
Yeah, so there's many ways you can show that, honestly. So one example, so in my interview, I think they asked me how I exemplified a growth mindset in my previous roles, and I talked about how when I started at HP, actually, I was hired to be a hardware engineer because I studied electrical engineering, and that's what I thought I wanted to do. But there was actually a flood in Houston when I arrived. So all our servers were drenched in water, and they were like, well, we can't do any hardware engineering right now because we're recovering from a flood. So they were like, we're going to have to put you in a software project and you're going to have to figure out how to do that. And I was like, okay, kind of nervous because I had not worked with Python or C before. But I learned, right? I had to roll up my sleeves. I had to watch a lot of tutorials. I was staying up at night even because I had work to do even after work. But honestly, at the end, it was so worth it because even though that was a struggle, I look back at it in hindsight and I think, wow, I learned a lot from that experience. And that's what helped me go to JP Morgan. And then from JP Morgan, I went to Amazon. And then from Amazon, I went to Spotify. So all those hurdles were worth it.
Right. Yeah. And from going from Amazon to Spotify, how did you make that transition? How did you kind of you had a clearly a different role in Amazon, so how did you convince them, yeah, I can do product marketing management. Sure.
Yeah, honestly, I was surprised that my fooling worked too. I'm just kidding. I so something that so sales and marketing are actually very similar in the sense that in sales you are selling a product to a customer. So each customer is going to be different, right? Like a C-level executive is going to be very different from a software engineer. A C-level executive is not going to care about what library you're using, what functions you're using. They're going to care more about the high level abstract details. So you need to know how to pitch to each of your customers. So since I had that mentality of being able to pitch to users based off of their mindset, that's what kind of helped me kickstart my career in product marketing because I knew how to talk to these different audience profiles. So like I mentioned earlier, even if you're just like practicing or trying to prep into getting into product marketing, I would start by like just taking your favorite product. Like, I don't know, I like Instagram. Talk about how you would pitch this to your mom or your friend who's an engineer or someone who would be a C-level, and then just kind of have like a little script to go over and then do small pitching. And if you just continue to do that, I think you could hone your skills in product marketing.
Awesome. Yeah. And I'd love to know a little bit more, like, about maybe an example of a project you worked on. You shared a little bit about that Google Cloud collaboration. What was that like working on your side and then like working with Google, and what did that project look like for you?
Yeah, so the project was super vast in terms of the number of stakeholders that I had to speak to. So in this case, we were working on creating a advertisement that we wanted displayed in physical and digital places. So physical in the sense like billboards, billboards and like bus stop stations, and then digital in the sense that it was actually also in like the New York Times and the digital print as well. So in order to kickstart this process, we were working actually very closely with legal and communications because communications has to make sure that the logo and the pitch line, it's all adhering to the Spotify values and the Spotify brand. And then you also work with legal because they're working with the Google legal department to make sure that this is something that represents both the brands. And then you're also working with designers who are actually creating this product. So there was a lot of collaboration, and I think the coolest part was just understanding how everybody thought. Like I had never worked with lawyers before, so it was really cool to see like how protective they are of our brand and how protective they are of our image. Versus like I don't know, a designer who's just very concerned about just the aesthetics of advertisement. So it was understanding different personalities and different dynamics.
All right, great. And I know you kind of already touched on this a little bit, but do you have any advice for recent grads who might be interested in this space, or for maybe engineers who want to make the transition like you? What kind of, besides the one book and practice session you mentioned, is there anything else you could share about that?
Yeah. So I think the biggest thing is to determine like what you're very passionate in terms of like whether you like working with engineering, like programmers, or whether you like being like a product advocate. See what you're really interested in and what really sparks your interest. And if product marketing management is something you really want to do, I would honestly I would actually just apply and see what happens. Why not? I honestly just applied. I had no idea I was going to get in, but I did. And they liked me. And I think sometimes you just have to shoot your shot. There's no formula. There's no specific way to get something done. You just have to like figure it out and get started.
Yeah, and how did you apply? Did you just apply through their website? Like sometimes, postings can be outdated. So what was your experience with the application process?
Yeah. Yeah. So I honestly just applied online. That was it. Yeah. I just like went on LinkedIn. I was like looking for, I really wanted to work at Spotify. Actually, I thought it'd be super cool to work in the music industry. And I was looking for something different, just because Amazon's a complete 180 from Spotify. And I applied and then I got in.
And did you adapt your resume in a specific way? How did you focus did you have a portfolio you sent in, your cover letter? What was that like?
Yeah, I had a cover letter. I did not have a portfolio because I'm not a designer by trade, so I don't really have anything to show, right? But I did talk a lot about my technical experiences being at Amazon. So the biggest so I worked at AWS, which is a cloud service provider, and in my current role right now, I'm also working with another cloud service provider, Google Cloud. So a lot of the fundamentals and the basic knowledge that I had from Amazon actually carried over because I was working on essentially the same things, just different language and terminology.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that's really helpful. And let's see. There's a fun question. What musical artists are in your heavy rotation right now? Since you're
That's
working
a
at a music company.
Yeah, let me actually pull up my Spotify because I've just been listening to so much. Like I honestly think I've been listening to Spotify more now than I did like when I was in New York because I just don't have anything to do sometimes. But I'm listening to Ellie Goulding, Zara Larson, Shawn Mendes, Rita Ora, Sam Smith, Cascade, Dua Lipa, 5 Seconds of Summer. I'm pretty much reading the after work playlist on my Spotify. So
Nice.
that's like my top right now.
Yeah. And let's see some more of these questions. Could you share a little bit more about maybe what is the breakdown like? How's the organization like in Spotify? Like what are the teams like? How does your team look like? Who's on your team? Kind of like that.
Yeah, that's a great question. So organization hierarchy is all going to differ based off the company. So at Spotify in particular, we care a lot about autonomy. So autonomy means that you are able to execute quickly on a task. You're able to just ship it out. So that's just something that we value. And because of that, we actually are not in like the typical org structure. We have more of like the missions, which like I mentioned earlier, missions have a purpose. So the free mission is different from the premium mission, right? Because free is the free tier and premium is the premium tier. So you're going to be segmented based off your mission. And then one hierarchy below mission is actually tribe. So a tribe is like a close group of people that it's like your, you know, your family, almost your extended family. Think about it that way, where you guys are all solving a problem together. And we have different tribes in my organization. One tribe is the data and infrastructure tribe. Another is the core infrastructure tribe. Another is a security tribe. Another is a design tribe. So tribes are just going to be your extended family. And then another granularity under that is actually squad. So a squad is going to be a smaller knit of people that you work on together. So one example of we have like weird names actually for our squads, like Polaris, smiley face. That's actually a squad, believe it or not. And this squad works together to produce a data pipeline, to develop a algorithm. So each of those squads have a different purpose. So that's how we're set up. It's a little different from most companies, but personally I like it because being in a squad makes me feel like I have a group of people I can go to if I have questions. And they're my support system, essentially. Like, we still have virtual ficas. They look out for me, they check up on me. And it's just nice to be part of a community, right? Especially during this time where everyone's just so distributed.
And within your role as a product marketing manager, what frameworks do you use the most?
So in terms of frameworks, I mean, I guess like frameworks can mean a lot of different things, right? Like, I guess it could be like, how do you measure insights, or how do you measure growth? For me right now, I use a lot of tools. So I'll say that. So I use Trello to keep track of tasks. I also use Jira so I use Jira specifically where if a product manager or another team is asking me for me to complete a task, and I get multiple requests on tasks all the time, I'll ask them to submit a Jira ticket. I also use Google Suite a lot. So Google Slides, Google Docs, and I use Google Slides to obviously create my slide decks, and Docs to create any notes that I need to share with PMs or designers.
Cool. And could you share with us maybe what's been your best experience so far working at Spotify as a technical product marketing manager?
Yeah, so the travel was obviously very fun when I was able to do it. I went to Stockholm a couple times, so that was just very cool because I've never been to Stockholm before. And the culture there is very different from America. In America, I feel like people just make work their life in America, and there's never any free time or time to just like slow down. Whereas like in Stockholm in particular, it's all about slowing down. It's all about enjoying life. I mean, people would literally take 2 hours out of their workday to just sit down and have coffee. That's like unheard of in America, right? Like, if your boss saw you doing that, they'd be like, what are you doing? Like, do you want to be in this company or not? You know what I mean? So it's the total different lifestyle. That was honestly the coolest part. And Spotify also does this cool thing called intro days. So intro days means that you get to come to Stockholm, and then you get to meet the CEO, Daniel Ek, and his C-level team. And they just kind of talk about what the values are and how far we've come since we originated, and just any other things about the Spotify culture. And that was really cool because I got to meet C-level people, which is always a unique experience because who gets to do that, right? And yeah, they really invest a lot of time and energy into you, which I think was really important for me because I'm still at a point in my career where I want to grow more. I'm obviously not an executive. So for me, Spotify has been really helpful because I've made a lot of mistakes, but at the same time, I don't get consequences for my mistakes, and I don't get punished for them, which is super important for your growth.
And what kind of opportunities do you have? Like, how does Spotify cultivate your growth within the organization?
Yeah, so one thing I really like about Spotify is actually the internal mobility. So right now, like, if you're a data engineer and you actually want to be like a product manager, it's actually very easy to switch. Whereas in most companies, I've noticed that if you want to pivot over to a different career, it's not looked highly upon. And honestly, sometimes it takes like years for you to be able to transition. So I remember when I worked at Amazon, if someone wanted to like switch, they had to be at a role for like almost 2 to 3 years, which
Wow.
is a long time. And the reason why Spotify really encourages internal mobility is because they'd rather have someone move in the company than like leave to find a different position, right? Because it takes like 3 to 4 months for you to onboard and like learn the culture, and they'd rather just have someone grow internally than get someone external.
Right. And do they offer any trainings or mentoring within the company to support you growing?
Yes, we are a huge advocate for mentoring and trainings. I'm actually part of a mentoring program right now where I got paired up with a executive within Spotify. So my mentor is the director of financial services at Spotify. So it's super cool because he's in the financial services part and I'm like more on the engineering side. So it's really cool to hear how he manages our $2 billion in assets, how he works with these investment banking firms to make sure that we're putting our money in the right place. Whereas I work on just more of like the technical product marketing and the development process. So it's really cool that I get to see a different side of life. As far as learning opportunities, we have so many as well. We really encourage people to attend these development sessions. I know I went to one session where it was called providing good feedback to others, which I think is always a tough subject because good feedback is obviously easy to give, but bad feedback is always tough, right? So I learned a lot of skills in terms of how to provide feedback to someone who might not be performing to the level that you need, and how to do that constructively and professionally. Because you don't just want to say like, oh, you suck, like I'm not working with you again, right? So it's
Right.
really helped me flex that muscle better.
Cool. So, kind of going back to your role as a product marketing manager, how do you relate to product managers and what's that relationship like? What do you need from PMs to be successful, and vice versa?
Yes. So I work very closely with PMs. They are the closest people I actually work with. And in terms of like how we work together, so typically like I have a lot of product managers reach out to me and they'll be like, hey, I need to work on this. Can you help me with that? And I look to see if this is something within my scope of responsibilities. Like, for example, if they're asking me to project manage a project, I can't do that. I can only create marketing assets for them. So it's very contingent based off the ask. It's always a very not difficult relationship, but it's a relationship where you want it to be mutually beneficial, right? So obviously, when a PM gives me work, I don't want to feel like I'm doing the product management work, right? I want to feel like I'm doing the PMM work. So it's like establishing that fine line between like who's doing what.
Mm-hmm. So, how in that role do you create kind of your boundaries or your scope? How do you define your scope to like a PM? And are they like on the same level as you? Are they a supervisor? Like, how does that work for you?
Yeah. So in terms of defining the scope, I do a lot more of the developer evangelism work. So if anything falls under that, then I take it over.
Mm-hmm.
If it doesn't, then I will talk through with them and see if this is something that's feasible for me. And if it's not, then I'm gonna be like, hey, this is more of a project manager role or a product manager requirement. So it just depends on the work they give me. And what
Right.
was the second part you asked again?
Oh yeah, I was just curious, like where you sit at in the org. Like, are PMs the same level as you? Like, are they higher up, and like, how does that relate?
Yeah, so it depends on the PM. So right now I'm just a technical product marketing manager. I don't have a senior in my name. If I'm working with a senior PM, they're higher than me. If I'm working with a product lead, they're above me. And then a product director is obviously like
Right.
up their level.
Yeah. And could you just repeat again for people who might have missed it to clarify what is the difference between a PM and a technical product marketing manager?
Yeah, that's a really great question. So a product manager puts the product on the shelf. So they work on the earlier phases of the product life cycle, right? So anything from development to deployment, that's what they work on. And then a product marketing manager is going to help take that product off the shelf. So they work on branding, distributing marketing assets via different channels, helping increase adoption rates, fixing the value proposition, doing user research about that customer who's adopting this product. Like, do you see more millennials using this compared to older folks? Do you see more women using this compared to men? And if there's more men that are using it or more women, then you try to find ways to appeal to that other half of the customer profile.
And how do you go about kind of doing your user research in these phases once you're at that place?
Yeah, so how I do user research is I typically talk to that group of people. Since my marketing is typically all internal developers for the most part, I try to understand how a backend engineer would think versus a mobile engineer versus a product lead who probably doesn't care about the nitty gritty technical details. They care more about abstract level thinking. So these are all things that I try to do research in my own time. So when I first started Spotify, I actually sat down with a lot of these folks just to understand, like, what their thinking was like, what their day-to-day was like. Because when you talk to these customers, you don't want to overload them with too much information, right? But you also don't want to underload them. So it's like finding that fine balance, that fine medium between the both.
Yeah. Yeah. And how have you found the product marketing and product, management community since you moved to New York?
Um, like the New York women in product management or like overall?
Just overall, like, how's your networking been? What's that been like for you to kind of get to know your peers within Spotify, outside of Spotify?
Yeah, so I actually find a lot of my events on Instagram, believe it or not, just because I primarily use that. I find it really hard to keep track of multiple apps. And for me, like Instagram is the way to go because I get to see a person's personality on it as opposed to LinkedIn, where everyone's kind of acting in their best behavior or being very professional. So I find a lot of my events on Instagram. I actually went to a Boss Woman Collective event. That was really fun. Boss Woman Collective is just a group for women in their early careers who are trying to get advice on career moves or just advice in general on how to navigate your professional life. So I've gone to a couple events with them. But as far as like events, I kind of wish I was able to go to more when I was in New York. I'll be honest. I didn't do as many events as I would have liked to. I did a lot of Spotify events. So after work, we'd have parties or we'd have like learning sessions. We also have like just fikas, which are just like a coffee chat. So I did more Spotify events than like actual events outside of my org.
Yeah. I'm just going to ask you here. I was going to ask it at the end, but some people are curious if you have a LinkedIn account, even though I know you've mentioned you prefer Instagram.
Yeah, I actually do have a LinkedIn. My LinkedIn's actually just my name. So if you just search up linkedin.com dash Nikki Bassetti, you'll actually find me. So
Cool. Awesome.
yeah.
So we have time for a few more questions before we wrap this up. So let's see. On average, how many internal products do you work on or take off the shelf at the same time?
That's a great question. So at one point I was helping take 5 internal products off the shelf, which was a lot. And I told my manager, I was like, hey, I'm a little overloaded with work. And she hired 2 more people. So that was awesome. So now I actually focus on just 2 at a time. And that's actually been a lot more helpful for me because a lot of product marketing is doing a lot of user research. So I told my manager, I was like, hey, I really want to focus on that phase because when I have 5 different products, it's really hard for me to understand what everybody wants to do. She took in that feedback and then she hired 2 more people. So that's been very helpful for me. But sometimes, like, depending on your team, you might be trying to take off 5 internal products sometimes, depending on how many team members you have. And then for other people, I've seen that they just work on one product in particular for many quarters.
Right. Okay. That's great. And let's see. So many questions. I just want to be sure I can ask as many as we have. Oh, yeah. This was one I was curious about as well. Because you're doing product research from the marketing perspective, how do you relate with UX researchers? And what kind of methodologies do you use to do your research? Do you use like surveys, user interviews? What kind of things do you do?
Yeah, I work very closely with UX researchers actually. Oh, my camera went off, my bad. So I work very closely with UX researchers. So I work with them very closely if I'm trying to understand what a customer wants. And we do this via Google surveys. And this is how we really solicit their feedback, and we try to understand what the customer's needs and wants are. And then from there, I actually work with designers in terms of designing like wireframes and mock-ups.
Mm-hmm.
And I essentially like work very closely with them to make sure that this meets our customer needs. And if it does, we actually go ahead and start doing A/B testing on the mock-up or the design. So we try to understand, we'll like ship out like an MVP, so a minimal viable product, and we'll look at where the customer is clicking on the most, like where are they just kind of hovering over, like are they telling us one part looks confusing, and then based off of that information we iterate and adapt.
Got it. And for the marketing side, do you use any special like listening tools to kind of see what people are saying about your product, or do you just mostly get your research through what you've shared about?
Yeah, so I think the best way to understand what your customer wants is obviously to ask them. And you can't ask everybody, right? So you have to ask like a sample group. So
Mm-hmm.
what I try to do is I will look at someone or try to talk to someone who might holistically represent that group. Sometimes that's hard to do. That's not always going to happen. So you have to talk to multiple people. So I think it's just contingent based off of that group. So in that group, if it's something very broad like data engineering, that's a vast group of people at Spotify, because data science is just huge, right? So
Right.
if you're talking to the data group in particular, you have to segment based off of, okay, am I talking to a data engineer or a data scientist
Mm-hmm.
or a data analyst? There's so many different fields, right, in data. So it's just figuring out what those granularities are and then segmenting based off of that.
Mm-hmm. And what kind of tools do you use to get that data? What kind of data analytics tools?
Yeah, so right now I use Tableau a lot. So I use Tableau dashboarding because I can see I it's very easy for me to see what kind of users are using my product, and I can actually segment it based off of location, even gender, even age, and that really helps me understand like, okay, so this age group isn't really adopting this product. How can I make it better for them? I also use a lot of BigQuery as well. So I use BigQuery in particular to extract. So BigQuery is used for more like granular details, such as like seeing metrics, like what kind of metrics are people hitting? So are these metrics like the click-through rates,
Mm-hmm.
the open rates? These are the different things I use for BigQuery.
Right. And when you're making decisions for product marketing, what's the difference? Like how important is like quantitative data that you're collecting versus the qualitative data you're also collecting, speaking with people? So how does that kind of play into the decisions you make?
Yeah, that's a really good question too. So I'm someone who cares a lot about both. So I care about qualitative and quantitative data. So like I mentioned earlier, I do a lot of different things, and for these different things, it depends what I'm looking for. So if I'm like sending out a newsletter to my internal customers, I'm obviously looking at quantitative data, right? Like click-through rates, open rates,
Right.
who is opening it based off of what location. But then I'm also looking at qualitative things like comments from this newsletter. So when people are they responding to me appropriately? Like, are they asking me like, hey, this was kind of confusing, where would I get more information about this? Are they saying like, hey, this newsletter made my day, like I love that emoji you used or that gif you used? So I have to actually use both most of the time.
Got it. Yeah. And since you've pivoted into this role as a product marketing manager, would you say, are you enjoying it so far? Do you want to stay in a role like this, or could you see yourself wanting to go back to being more of a PM or an engineer? How is that for you?
Yeah, that's a great question too. So right now, I want to stay in product marketing for a couple years, just because I want to really improve my product marketing skills. I think right now, there's still so much room for me to grow.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if eventually I want to get back into software engineering or something more technical. I'm actually not so sure right now. Um, I think right now I'm just trying to enjoy my current role and learn as much as possible.
Mm-hmm.
And I think by doing that, I'll find something later if something comes my way.
Got it. Cool. And so let's see, we have time for probably one more question. How do you contribute to product development or product improvements from your data findings?
So in terms of product improvements, I look a lot at insights and metrics. So I'll look at these metrics on Tableau, on BigQuery, maybe even my MailChimp account. MailChimp is what we use to send these newsletters. And then based off of that data, I'll be like, okay, so a lot of people in Stockholm are actually not opening this newsletter, but people in New York are. Why could that be? It's because we sent this newsletter at 9 a.m. New York time, which is in the afternoon in Stockholm. So people aren't looking at this because they've turned off their laptop at that point.
Right.
So
Right.
then I think, okay, so now when we send these newsletters out, we actually have to segment it and send the Stockholm folks, send it to the Stockholm folks in their morning time, and New York folks at 9 a.m. or whatever in Eastern Standard Time. So
Mhm.
I really look at these insights to try to figure out if I'm doing something right or if I'm doing something that I need to improve on.
Great. And just to wrap it up, what are you doing these days to keep you buoyant or find some joy as you're working from home?
Yeah, I really like this question because I have been working out a lot. I'm really proud of myself for that, actually. Um, I actually worked out a lot when I was in New York, so I was always going to Barry's boot camp, Soul Cycle. I was always on ClassPass, just like finding a class that fit my needs. And then once quarantine happened, I was like, great, I can't go to any fitness studio anymore, so I need to find an alternative. So I've actually started doing a lot of home workouts. So I do HIIT. I do a lot of I just do a lot of workouts with my resistance band, actually.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and just like very simple workouts, honestly, like sit-ups, lunges, jump squats, jump roping. And it's been the best way to alleviate and clear my mind, just because
Mm-hmm.
I've not so much isolation in my life. So the only thing that's keeping my sanity is working out.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Nikki, for your presentation and for being so candid and open and sharing your experience and your insights. I, I can't speak for everyone, but I can say I am very happy and I've learned a lot. And I hope everyone who's attended is walking away feeling inspired and like they learned at least one new thing. So thank you so much. And let's see. And thank you to Naimisha too for organizing this event. Thank you to New York Women in Product Management for making these events happen. I know for myself, these New York Women in Product Managements have been great learning opportunities. And I'm just impressed that there seems to be an event like almost every week. um, and in fact, coming up on May 30th, there is another event where where you can hear from a product manager about banking and fintech. So that's exciting. And once again, I know Naimisha's put the info in the chat about Instagram and Slack. So you can join New York Women in Product Management. Follow us on social media. You also have the contact details for Nikki here. And her LinkedIn is also added into the chat. So definitely feel free to get involved. Feel free to connect. Like Nikki said, we just connected because of this. So there's so many incredible women in this collective of people, and I am just so excited to keep learning from all of you. So I hope you have a great rest of your evening, a great rest of your night, and yeah, thank you everyone. We'll see you at the next event.
Thanks everyone for coming. Hit me up on Instagram, my email, my LinkedIn, whatever. I would love to continue to connect with everyone and share my words of wisdom or give you any sort of career advice. Or if you want to transition even to Spotify too, even a potential referral, whatever you want, I'm there for you. Just reach out. But thanks again, everyone.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Bye. Bye.